Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 28 September 2020, and these are the couple of articles that we'll be discussing today. The first article for the day is taken from the Indian Express and it is titled The Farmer's Freedom to Sell. Dr. Ashok Gulati has written an article in the Indian Express on 18th May 2020 and it was titled A 1991 Movement for Agriculture. So, in order to revive the Indian economy, on 17th of May 2020 has brought out its third installment of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan package, and as a part of the deal, they have announced agricultural reforms. So, at that time, there was an ordinance that was passed, and since the parliament is now in session, the ordinances were placed as bills and then eventually converted into acts now. So, this package of Atmanirbhar Bharat also included an announcement of 1 lakh crore to fund the agricultural infrastructure projects, and also there was 500 crores for Operation Greens, which was allocated way back in 2017 itself, and now that Operations Green, the scheme was extended further to all the fruits and vegetables. Apart from this, the government has also shown its intention as a part of the package to bring out the reforms that we are talking about right now. Essentially, they were about Essential Commodities Act and allowing a legislation where farmers can sell their produce outside the APMCs, and then creating a legal framework for contract farming. So, as a result, there has been an uproar because in the recent acts that were passed, there was no mention of MSP. Now, MSP was the only safeguard that the Indian farmer had in the absence of a market failure. The basic premise is this: the farmer's freedom to sell his produce at the price that he decides should be the way forward, just like in every other business. But agriculture has not been remunerative. In order to make this business remunerative, it is important to give the farmer a freedom to sell his produce at the price he decides. For this, we have to encourage competition. Now, when we are talking about competition, there will obviously be a segment of market that will be eliminated because of this competition. Now, in a competition where 86% of the farmers own small and marginal land, like less than 1 hectare, they will be very vulnerable if this competition kills their produce. So, that will actually be antithetical to the entire concept of making farming remunerative. So, this point was raised by a lot of farmer unions, and they demanded that MSP be made a legal right. We have to remember that MSP is declared for crops by CACP, and then the central government through the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approves this MSP. So, there is no legal mandate that the central government must do this, but this is taken up as a matter of policy to safeguard the interests of the farmers. In this context, the article discusses about how the idea of liberalizing the farm sector, as envisaged in the article that he has written on 18th of May 2020, he compared this legislation with the 1991 LPG reforms. He said that in 1991, when we liberalized our economy and allowed the private players to enter into our businesses, Indian economy started growing, and a similar movement is what we have right now in 2020 with respect to agriculture. But the author also raised certain concerns. For example, take the TOP scheme, which was given a fund of 500 crores almost 3 or 4 years ago. Till now, only 5% of the budget allocated for this scheme was released. Another example that we are talking about right now is a ban on exports imposed on onions. It is ironical that in the context of the Essential Commodities Act, when the legislation was passed, simultaneously there was a ban on exports of onions also. So this is antithetical to the concept of free market economy in agriculture. The problem here is the reason why farmers are demanding that MSP be given to all the crops, and thus making it legal for the government to procure this all the crops at the price decided by the government, will actually destroy private markets. Neither does the central government have that kind of financial wherewithal to buy all the crops at the price that they decide, and neither do the private players have any interest in procuring the crops at that MSP. So, legally mandating an MSP will create a system where there will be no incentive for the private player to enter into that sphere and invest in agricultural infrastructure. Therefore, the authors wants the opposition that taking this entire debate around MSP would be very dangerous for the above discussed reasons. Therefore, some states which fear losing revenue from the mandi fee and cess, because the new law says that there shall be no fee imposed on any private player who wants to enter and invest in this markets. So there are certain states like Punjab and Haryana which are fearing losing revenue from mandi fees and cess. So to address these concerns, probably the center can promise certain 3 to 5 years of compensation like it did in the case of GST. Again, what we have to focus here on aggregation of private players and ensuring that a competition of sorts improves the efficiency of this agricultural sector. But at the same time, we also have to keep in mind the interests of the farmers, because if we have a look at the agricultural census, like already mentioned, 86% of the farmers conduct their farming activities on land pieces which are less than 1 hectare, and hence they are called marginal farmers. Unless and until we have a mechanism where we encourage farmer produce organizations which gives these small and marginal farmers a legal basis to carry out contract farming and have a bargaining power, there is every chance that they might be exploited by the private players. So it is finding that fine balance between the interests of the consumers, interests of the farmers, and also the interests of the corporates. It is the facilitating role that government must play in this regard. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled The Benefits of Carbon Tax. To begin with a brief background, the most recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. This is the basis for all climate change activities, and this is the report, a collection of scientific research from across the globe. And the report says that we might have just around 10 years to act on the issue of global warming. So in this context, the IPCC says that the total global emissions will need to fall down by 45% from 2010 levels to 2030, and by 2050 they have to be net zero. It is because of this reason European Union has announced its intention to make European Union climate neutral by 2050. Similarly, a couple of days ago, China announced that it will move towards a carbon neutral economy by 2060. But the real question that we have to ask right now is, do we have this kind of a time? And if we don't have that kind of a time, what should be the role played by India? So, if we don't meet this target, what happens? That is one of the biggest question that we have. And if we take a look at the tropical regions of the world which are most densely populated, even last year when we have a look at the water crisis in our country, the global south is most likely to be affected. We have seen this in the Tamil Nadu water crisis. There was absolutely no drinking water available throughout the summer in Tamil Nadu, and Chennai faced a severe water crisis. So there is a need to share the burden to avert the dangers of global climate change, and the global south, which has historically contributed less to the problem of global warming is being made to bear the entire burden right now because of global warming. So it is on the receiving end of the lifestyle choices made by the global north. So is this fair? That is the question that is being asked. Now in the Indian context, recently the chief of UN, Antonio Guterres, in a talk that he gave in Terry, suggested that India should play a central role and move away from using coal. Now, even if we want to do that, we don't have that kind of an option because of the growing population needs and the need to sustain an economic growth. So, how do we balance finally between this need for economic growth and at the same time ensure that we transition towards a renewable energy based economy? The article writer in this article simply says that we have to impose a carbon tariff, that is, for every activity that we are carrying out, we need to impose a carbon tax. That is the simplest explanation of this article. However, I would like to take this discussion forward and see how we can apply this idea of carbon tax on a global level, because whenever we are talking about environmental legislations, one of the most important principle that is always central to this environmental legislations is the common but differentiated responsibility. In an article that appeared in Hindu last year on 19th of September 2019, there was one idea which is very interesting, and this idea was called the Just Energy Proposal. So what is this Just Energy Proposal? It is based on the premise of this CBDR principle only. So it is designed in such a way that it creates a sense of global justice in terms of climatic fallouts and the respective contributions of the countries. It will also help poor countries to develop. It will also help the resource poor developing countries in such a way that they will make an energy transition without having to worry about the finances duly. So how can this work exactly? The first priority in that article they mentioned was to change the energy infrastructure. Now, one of the reasons why India cannot afford to move away from coal is because of the historic investments that we have made in coal plants. If you take a look at the various coal plants that we have in the central India region and also East India like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, all these areas have rich sources of minerals and they have invested heavily in coal plants. So it will have a twofold impact if these coal plants are shut down. First, employment, and second, there will be no alternative renewable energy which can create that employment and also meet the needs of energy. So the global tax which is collected from across the world on an equitable basis should be used for financing energy infrastructure in the poorer countries which will face a massive challenge in meeting this energy infrastructure. And the second one is to support these countries towards a model which is sustainable. And in that article there was a payment which was suggested of 570 billion US dollars across the world to make this transition towards renewable energy. Those countries which emit more than the global per capita average have to pay for their own transition and also fund those countries which are below this average. So those who are at the receiving end of this climate injustice will be compensated historically for even as the entire world transition towards a greener earth. So this will result in the process of carbon tax sharing. This is the most effective idea that I have found which we can use in our exams. So please remember this Just Energy Proposal and we can use this idea across the world. So this carbon tariff or whatever is being talked about has already been implemented in a different form in the form of coal cess. However, that has had very little impact on the actual reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, we have to encourage this Just Energy Proposal. That is the key takeaway from this idea and the extension that I have given in the form of this editorial that appeared last year. So I would recommend you to go back to this article and have a look at this. Even though I've explained the crux of that article, you can have a look at that article for certain information about statistics and other report related details. That's it for the day. Thank you.